We tried to do that. Welcome to the January meeting of the Governance Committee. I'm going to sit down now and have to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with a quick business meeting before we get into our facilitated conversations and meetings and all things that we're doing. So welcome. I hope you all had a lovely holiday season, got some nice downtime, and you're ready to get working today. So we're going to get started. We do have a few slides that we are going to make our way through right now. So we are going to hold off on the introductions for this in the room until we get to our facilitated meeting. But on the next slide, let's just look at a few of our ground rules, our reminders. Virtually, I don't think we have. Yes. We do. And we might have some. Okay, so if anyone's virtual, just make sure you take a look at those virtual meeting protocols. Everyone just take a quick look for our in-person meeting agreements. We're mostly starting on time. We're going to have respectful professional communication. We're going to be working toward our shared goals, and we're really going to see all of this sharing of ideas and opportunities.
And also, I just want to be sure everybody knows the meeting, this part, the business part is being live streamed. While we're in here, we will turn off the live stream when it's out of
it. Right. That one was so live streamed and being recorded. Well, we are just so thrilled today to welcome a brand new member for our governance committee. Ellen Reckhow, thank you so much for being here today and for joining us. Linda, did you want to add any more?
Yeah, I just, Ellen has been a long-term friend of early education in our community and also statewide as a former elected official for over 32 years in Durham.
32.
Yeah. And as in her retirement, we appreciate the fact that she has been serving on the early years board of directors. And as you guys know, we have representation from the board on this governance committee, and Ellen was asked to join by our board chair. And obviously she brings just so much knowledge and so much support, and was actually on the county commission when the task force, preschool task force, identified this as a priority from input from the community. So we know that just really benefited from her being on this team. And when we did the orientation last week, she already was great. So I know we can look for her to have a lot of insight. So we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here today, Ellen, and we look all forward to interacting and as we have our right. Okay, so here are the objectives. You'll see it on the screen for our business meeting, our brief business meeting. We have one voting item for sure and one potential voting item. We're going to look and approve at the November meeting minutes, and then we're going to have some conversation about the Durham parent fee policy. And then we're going to wrap that up with looking at enrollment numbers. We all have been really wanting to keep track of enrollment numbers and be aware of those enrollment numbers, so we're going to have some data to look at today. So let's just go ahead and get started. So you received in the email from Linda, and maybe, okay. So you received the email, the November meeting minutes via email. So hopefully you took a minute to look at those before you came here today. And when you're ready, if you have any questions or comments or any corrections, let us know. If none, then we'll be looking for a motion to approve. Happy to motion. Great, thanks. Wonderful. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Great. Okay, the November minute notes have been approved. Wonderful. Okay, so now let's get into what we're here today.
Okay, we're going to, in just a moment, we're going to pivot to talking both our contextual information around the budget as well as information about parent. But before that, just to re-ground you, you've seen this slide very many times, but just to remind everybody why we're here. So we say all the time that Durham PreK represents opportunity. It's about Durham's commitment to expanding access to high quality publicly supported preschool. It's about supporting our existing programs that are funded through other non-local funding streams by enhancing opportunities to access preschool, both in existing public preschool as well as our local. And our main goals obviously are to make sure we have high quality classroom instruction, we support family engagement, and that we continue across the entire early childhood system to build capacity. So we believe that the work and investments in the 4-year-old services, those investments really impact all children's services in childcare in Durham, in early education in Durham. So it's all about that lack of opportunity when the arts it's available as a priority for expanding. Next one. So just quickly reminding you that what the local dollars do besides expanding access for 4-year-olds, they also provide, those local dollars provide intensive technical assistance and coaching for both Durham PreK sites as well as other sites across the public preschool system. That technical assistance also is funded for future sites. So early education programs in the community that want to potentially join the public preschool arena but need to work to improve their quality. The technical assistance is available to what we call capacity building tier. And then also what this local investment does is prioritizing the funding of higher wages. Compensation is a huge problem, an issue in early education, as we know from many studies, and we talk about that in these meetings on a regular basis. Next slide. Okay, just to remind you, y'all, I know people get tired of hearing me say this all the time. Presently, our community goal is to one day reach 75% of the total 4-year-old census, having enough seats in public 4-year-old preschool for 75% of our children. And we are still, even with some of the cuts that have happened in some of the public preschool programs, we're still hovering at 42%. Right this time in terms of seat availability.
Question, that I found that the flatness, a little disturbing. Can we dig into that? Or do you want to?
Sure. Well, we obviously, this will be part of what we talk about today because our commitment to that goal is a key component of the program. But just to acknowledge, we were on a much steeper growth trajectory even before COVID. And as we went into COVID, obviously that affected services. And then post-COVID, the reality of financial resources have impacted our ability to grow our percentage of seat availability. So we have been working hard to continue to focus on being ready for growth when funds are available by making sure that our capacity building TA reaches out across the community, and we've invested a lot in our workforce development through our apprenticeship program. But the reality is we have been flat. We were also impacted by this year, we were impacted by some cuts to NC PreK that came from the state. And, that created some seat loss too. And in addition to that, there are fewer Title I seats in Durham Public Schools.
One follow-up though, I was concerned, I was on the board when we opened up pre-K center with it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I saw that we are substantially under there. So we have funded seats that aren't filled. So that's a red flag. Just wanted to raise.
Yes, and enrollment has been a key issue, which is why every governance meeting this whole school term and forward, we are reporting on enrollment, both, actual enrollment and then, of course, availability of seats. And, when it has been a key place that we've been working with public schools on their strategies for increasing. And, there has been some increased. So, but yeah, this is a key component of our work, is being good stewards for those public, identifying what the barriers are for people enrolling and what are the ways in which we can support families to access the service. So, and we'll talk about that a lot more. Thanks for your question. Next slide. Okay. So just, we're not going to talk really deeply about the budget right now, but for some context, as we move forward to talk about the fee, which Joy will talk about in just a few minutes. In context right now, for the current year budget, the dollars locally, there were no cuts to locally funded seats. The way that was achieved was there was the addition of some one-time ARPA funds. And those ARPA dollars do expire in November of 26. And actually the seat support expires at the end of this school term. And so as we are crafting our budget requests for this coming year, we will be addressing those gaps that are created by the use of one-time funds, not only to support our typical locally funded seats, but also you'll recall that ARPA dollars were used by the county to open the preschool classrooms at Murray Massey. So we have that gap also in funding. But this year, using the gift of some one-time dollars, we were able to implement the increase in the teacher support payment that you voted on last year. And we were able to preserve our support for RAP care scholarships. RAP care being born after school for families who are financially eligible. And we also did a small notice for instructional staff. But what we did not do this year, we did not implement the increase in reimbursement rates that this committee voted on last year. So we did vote to increase the reimbursement rate, but we held that because of the final budget. The sites did get a gain in resources because they got an increase in the teacher support payment, which helps them pay the salaries we require. But they did not get a per child reimbursement increase in the current. And you also will remember North Carolina doesn't have a budget, and that meant that teachers across our state did not get increases this year. And so we were, by increasing our teacher support payment, it was just to maintain where we were. Teachers did not get a raise in the current year. Next slide. Okay, so right now, this reflects the funding that passes through directly to our classrooms. And as I already talked about, those funds would be expiring after the school year. Next slide. Okay, so just to keep in the back of your mind as we get ready to talk about the parent fees, and also as we later today go through our facilitated meeting where we will really review data in a deep way and talk about our future plans and goals. For the coming budget, the things that we will be keeping in mind is that we want, at a minimum, we want to implement the rate increase you already passed. Okay, so right now at today's allocation numbers, that means we're already in the hole for a little over $262,000. And then we also need money to pay for the seats at Murray Massillon. That money goes directly right now to the school system budget through the ARPA grant. And so the way that works, the school system receives those dollars directly and they use them across their preschool budget. If those seats are funded through Durham PreK or through the school system, we will obviously need additional dollars. We need funding to increase the RAP reimbursement rate because we have been told to anticipate some increase in the subsidy reimbursement. So you'll recall that RAP care, before and after school care, is outside of our 6.5-hour school day for Durham PreK. So before and after school services are charged separately by the site. And if a family is financially eligible, we provide a child care scholarship to cover that. And also some families receive a voucher from social services to cover that. But the rate increases are set by the state for subsidy, and we anticipate some increase to those rates. In addition, we are budgeting for expecting a teacher raise for next year. And then, so you can see there that we have a substantial need, even just to maintain this year's service, we need close to additional $2 million. Now, that doesn't address new needs or increases in the number of seats. It's just to make.
Could you say what the number was from this year one more time, just by comparison? What the 2025, 2026 total number was?
The budget number or the?
Yeah, the budget number.
So you'll go
Just
back to
answer.
the slide.
That one,
So
thank
the
you.
current budget, the pass-through budget right now, there's $5,466,393. That is the direct county allocation of ongoing dollars. And then we received a one-time addition in ARPA funding to support seats. That's 7.
Thank you. And can you just, on the Murray Massenburg front, are we right now to the Whitted Point fully subscribed there, or all those seats filled?
Murray Massenburg is full.
Okay. And that's a growing area, right? We're gonna see more.
Yeah, it is a newer school and it is subscribed. There are 3 preschool classrooms.
So what you're saying is we already have preschool classes at Murray Mass.
Yes.
How many do we have?
3.
And we're going to add how many with the
We-
additional?
we would be adding- So right now,
It says additional 800.
okay, if you go to the next slide. Okay. So in our current budget, the Murray Massenburg money is not in the Durham PreK budget at present. It goes directly to the school system. And regardless of whether the county decides to keep it at the schools or move it over to us, it was funded, those 3 classrooms were funded for 2 years, temporary dollars. ARPA dollars, because when Murray Massenburg opened, it was a priority to have 3 classrooms there. And based on the county budget, the commissioners felt that it was a good candidate for some of the ARPA funding, knowing that in the long term, temporary dollars would. So those dollars are coming to an end. So to be sure we maintain those 3 classrooms, we would need additional, to our current budget, we'd need an additional.
So we're not adding additional classrooms, we're just filling the gap. Got it.
Yeah, no, this money here, the almost $2 million, just maintains what we are presently doing this year.
And just out of curiosity, do we, like, as this group or your team, get to decide what if we allocated dollars from Whitted, which is not being filled, to Murray Massenburg, or is that not a conversation that we get to decide?
So the way it works, there are substantial dollars, local dollars from the county that are allocated to Durham Public Schools directly to provide preschool services. And there are dollars out of the Durham PreK budget that we administer that go to schools also. It's historical. And for the Durham Public Schools directly administered seats, we do not, this body, and we don't have, the school board controls those. And so with it presently, the direct funded seats include Whitted and Murray Massenburg presently. In addition to, schools that have Title I seats and not blended with our. So it is a complex system. And I suggest what we do is at our March meeting, when we give you our normal enrollment report, we can also do a diagram of seats, because it is something that's good to be reminded of on a regular basis, is because we have a complex graded system. Our goal always, you hear us say all the time, Durham County money spent last.
Mhm.
That is our goal, because we want to bring in resources from the feds, from the state, other sources, and use those dollars for the appropriate needs of our children, and use our local dollars to expand access and to meet gaps. So, the school system is a very important partner and has been working really closely across the public private partnership to try to navigate all these complexes. And it is something we're all committed to make sure that when it gets back to. And we know that Murray Massenburg is a very popular site, and those three classrooms are very important to this community. So we support those getting dollars and existing. We obviously, as this group, we would like to bring that site into the fold so that they can be a part of this group's guidance. However, if it remains in the public schools, we know that we will continue to work with public school leadership to make sure that those classrooms are. So obviously, it's a very complex thing, and we can spend some time talking about it. I think we should definitely in our March. Okay, next slide. So this is the real bulk of what we want to do today in terms of in this business meeting, is really have a deep discussion on parent fees. I'm going to ask Joy Turner to talk with you about these next slides. And then we do have a staff recommendation, but obviously this group will review the information and either decide to make a motion for a vote today or defer, either way. So I'm going to turn over to Joy.
Thanks, Linda. So this chart you saw at our November meeting as well, and sort of gave you the preview that we would be talking about this more in depth today. And just as a reminder that the way parent fee work is parents at 400% of the federal poverty level are assigned a parent fee that's 2% of their gross monthly income. They pay that directly to the site, and then we reduce our reimbursement to the site by that parent fee amount. So parent fee is, our rate is $14.56. If a parent fee is $200, parent pays $200, we pay $12.56. So the site still gets $14.56. It's just part of it comes from the parent and part of it comes from us. So that the parent fees offset the cost directly to our program. And so that's why we wanted to talk about the budget ahead of time, because adjusting parent fees will impact our budget. And so they're all related. But this chart shows what we've seen over the past 4 years since parent fees were reinstated after COVID. We've continued to see an increase in both the number of families with parent fees and also the average parent fee collected. So you can see just very much an upward trend. So we wanted to look into that. If you go to the next slide. This chart shows the 200% of the federal poverty level. That's the green line at the bottom. That's the cutoff for NC pre-K eligibility. 400% federal poverty level is the orange line. That is where the parent fee kicks in for Durham pre-K. And then the median income in Durham County is the blue line. And that, just noting, those are projected numbers for 25 and 26, because those census numbers are not available yet, but it's projected based on the growth pattern that we've seen. The purple dot, which you can't really, the lower dot, the dot right above the blue line, is 450% of the federal poverty level, which is slightly above Durham County's median income. And then the higher dot above that is 500%, of the federal poverty level. So this chart raises a question of whether we should consider adjusting the parent fee threshold for the 26-27 school year, because parents who make below the median income in Durham County are being charged a parent fee. And the idea of the parent fee was that parents of higher income should be expected to pay a small portion of their income to help spread the money further to reach more lower and middle income families. But what we've seen is a sharper increase in median income in Durham. And so there's just this gap that you can see was not there earlier in the program. And so we just wanted to discuss this and see if it was time for a change. If you'll go to the next slide. In preparation for this, we did do a survey of our parents from last school year who had assigned parent fees. We surveyed parents of 124 children in late December, early January. We had 47 parents respond, which is a response rate of 38%, which I thought was pretty good, especially given this was right around the holidays. Families had a lot of other things going on. They still completed our survey. Overall, 85% of families who responded felt that their assigned parent fee was just right. However, when I'm looking at the responses by the percent of the federal poverty level that families were, you can see that those in that first bracket, which would be those below the median income in Durham, a third said that the parent fee was too much, versus overall 15% said it was too much. And so it definitely does, based on what families reported to us, seem to be having a bigger impact for those families below the median Durham County income.
What was the number? What's the end for the 400% to 449%? What's the number of people that you fit that in? Because that could skew it if it's like a small portion. I'm just curious about that. Because 47, I mean 38% is good, but 47 is, I would say, pretty small.
So 400 to, I do know I would have to pull it up. I don't have it off the top of my head, but that is the smallest group of, not just in the respondents, but in the number assigned a parent fee. It is the smallest group. If you go to the next slide. So we want to look at what would be the impact of adjusting the parent fee threshold. So in this chart, the first column is current, and this is based on this year's enrollment and this year's assigned parent fees. And then you have what it would mean to increase to 450 and what it would mean to increase to 500. So if we were to not have the parent fee kick in until 450%, we'd see fewer children with a parent fee, but the average parent fee would go up because you're cutting off families with lower incomes, and so the individual parent fee is going to be higher, and it would mean parent fees accounting for about $42,000 less of our budget than this year. If we increase to 500%, that would be around 87,000. So that 87,000 would have to come from our budget to make up for the not coming from the parent fees. And just a note for that first row, the 2026 federal poverty levels are not out yet. They'll be out later this month. So that is still just based on the 2025 FPL because that's what's available. So if you go to the next slide, so the staff recommendation would be to increase the threshold to 450% of the federal poverty level. That would bring the parent fee assignment back in line with the median income in Durham County, so that the parent fee would only kick in for families above that median income. Would address the needs we found in the parent survey. There is an impact to the budget, but it is $42,000 is a very small amount of the total budget. But it seems like it would have a big impact for families. However, as Linda just went over the scenario of all the funding that we're gonna need to make up in order to just stay even with our current seats, our current expenditures. We know that any impact to the budget is still impactful. And so that is certainly something to consider, but that is what we wanted to lay out for you to discuss and think about making a decision.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have got a recommendation from staff in front of us. Questions, conversations, thoughts? Anyone want to make a motion? That's where we're at right now. What's the pleasure of this group going forward?
I would just add a comment onto this, that the next probably 9 to 12 months are gonna be pretty rough in Durham, and I would expect that families are gonna have more struggles, so I think this is probably something that we should absolutely be taking seriously.
My commentary, I would at least think to push the vote to February, with this other potential vote that's about to happen. It will greatly affect our service area with the potential fees for Medicare. Because those are our people we serve. So do we want to ask people for more money? We're trying to figure out if we're going to eat or go to the doctor.
Yes, ma'am.
So my thought, and that actually is a good thing to lift up, but my thought is that maybe if they're eligible and receiving Medicaid, that they might not be falling into the group where they're gonna get parent fees. Because of the higher incomes, you know what I mean? I mean, I know, I'm here for it all day, what you're saying, but that's what I'm thinking for that part, but I do think that, from the perspective of working with the families and the placement team and stuff like that, that is definitely a comment that we get a lot is, oh, that's a really high parent fee, and they sometimes, we've had parents that had to decline their seats because of that parent fee, and it's usually those families that are falling from that 400 to 449% range.
Okay, Brittany Gregory is online, as she's one of our members and she's.
Hey y'all, sorry I'm not there. Hope to be there the next meeting, but I did have
Turn
a
it up.
question
Yeah.
about
Hold on just a
the,
second, Brittany. Turn it up.
Oh.
Good.
Okay.
all right, hey y'all, sorry I'm not there. But I'm glad to be a part of this discussion. Quick question. What is like the fees that are collected? I know that that's part of the budget. What is it used for, and like what is the impact of that money that we do get from parent fees?
The parent fees go directly to the site as part of their reimbursement, and so it does not come to us in any way, and it just offsets the other spending that we make. So it's just part of the full 1456 reimbursement that the site gets. It's just like they're getting it from us, and they use it however they need to support those classrooms.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to know.
So I'm having a bit of a disconnect on the chart with the impact of adjusting the parent fee. So if we go up to 450%, what the recommendation is, then the number of children with a parent fee goes down.
Right.
Yeah. Because they're higher.
Or-
And
Oh, I see, yeah, okay, now I get it, there was something. Now I get it.
but it's.
So the average cost that we look at would
Right.
go up because the higher income families would be the ones paying. Yeah. Fewer people would have.
So, quick question, I have a comment. I mean, I feel like looking at it from a larger perspective, I feel like if you look at the earliest slide, the acceleration of both families who are getting parent fees and the amount of it. And I mean, again, not saying that given obviously, that parent fees could be the determination between saying yes or no to the seats. I think when I look at it, it's like this number is gonna continue to increase. And if so one of our ideas, like we wanna make sure to offset some of that, but we also want to increase the number of children who are able to access seats, right? So we have to figure out what's gonna be our priority, right? Because the more you say, we're gonna pay more parent fees, you know that's gonna cut into the number of seats you could actually fund. So I feel like we have to sort of figure out what is our priority? Is it to get more kids in seats? Or is it to just make sure we at least maintain the seats we have, right? And so I feel like that's something we have to really, because I think the fees will continue to increase. We could guarantee that, and to your point, even more. So I guess the question is, where do we really stand? I mean, 42 sounds minimal now, but next year is not gonna be minimal, it's gonna be more. So I feel like we have to sort of think through what are the implications? Because once you get people used to certain things, you can't take it back. And that's my thing. You cannot go back and say, well, let's adjust it back. You either keep it and see what rides, just because we know a lot of budget changes are going to happen. And knowing that, yeah, some families are gonna have to sort of say, I can't do this right now because of the cost of it. I just worry that we make this shift right now and then we're gonna have to, I worry about that. So that's just my one thought.
Can I build on that point? Because I think it brings up the broader question, the strategic question for today, which is, are we prioritizing capacity building or are we gonna prioritize filling every seat and making that experience as strong as possible so that parents who experience it become our evangelists?
Right, and just quickly to address why we brought this to you. So the application for the next school year opens March 2nd. And it is confusing for parents if we begin the application process without a set policy. So that's why it's timely right now. Secondly, the reason we brought it forth is when you originally, if you'll recall that we have changed this policy in the course of our terms of this program over the last 8 years. This policy was enacted and then changed one other time. At the time it was created, this group at that time, members at that time, prioritized making sure that that median income was examined and it was a priority that families who were not at median did not pay. That was at that time. So just those of you who weren't here then, I wanted to just flip that up to make sure you knew why that was an issue. But it's obviously quite complex. And I know Miranda and Beth have had their hands up.
Yeah, well, just from like a center director point of view, because I do believe any cut to any extra revenue would be kind of dangerous right now at this point. I mean, the average pre-K preschool tuition is 15 a month. And so even at a parent fee at the average of 330, likely if a parent is at that 400, both parents are working, and their child was already in care. So the parent fees that we saw come in at the school were significantly less than what they were going to pay and what they had been paying prior. So it would be, I think my question, and I don't know. I don't know if we have the research, but the people that declined the seats because they said the parent fee was too high, were they originally in care?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's data we don't have available. We could look into it. I will say of the 47 who completed the survey, 85% were in licensed childcare before, either a licensed center or a licensed home. And in that situation you're describing, where a $300 parent fee was certainly less than what they were paying before. The flip side though is if they are in that situation and both parents are working, they're also going to have to pay for wrap care for that before and after school to make it a full day. So it's not just the $300 that they're paying, it's $300 plus 400, 500, depending on what
Still
the site.
significantly less.
Still significantly less, it's true, yeah. Yes.
I mean, that was one of the points I was gonna make, which is that, I mean, I know we're even aiming nationally at 7%, right, as a reasonable amount. 2% is way, way less. It is still a burden for families. And to the point that was made earlier, unless something passes in the Senate, the ACA premiums have gone through the roof, which may very well be affecting folks in this group. Starting in July, we're looking at potential SNAP impacts that are gonna potentially hurt this group of folks very hard. The Medicaid rebates, especially if any of these children need early intervention services, those rates are potentially gonna be hit. So we are looking at a tsunami of expenses coming for families in this area. And so I do think if there is any relief we can provide that is helpful and to keep true to that median rate at the same time, to Rick's point, I think that $2 million is a massive gap to fill, and no help is gonna, the state, there is no funding additional for the child care at the state level at this point, despite a lot of advocacy efforts. And so, I think we have to be very realistic about what that $2 million gap is gonna look like to fill, and what prospects do we have to fill. So there's what I want to do, and then there's also the idea of cutting children from care because we can't fill that $2 million gap. is very scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that the parents who are making 100% also may be homeowners. And Durham County homeowners get really big tax revenue. Because the city raised taxes several cents and the county raised. So, you know, when you're thinking about your budget, you've got also, if you want to keep your home, be able to pay the taxes, right? So this is like a no-win situation. But it's only, I mean, it's a relatively small amount in the scheme of things, but I don't know. It's hard. I mean, I can argue it both ways.
Can I put a motion into vote?
You can always put it.
Never got that. No, we're saying that.
Oh, no, you have the motion.
Yeah,
You,
state-
what is your
state
motion?
your
What is your
motion.
motion? I
Oh,
thought you were like,
sorry.
We don't know your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
so.
I'm drunk on power. A motion to vote on the recommendation to increase the threshold to 450% of the property level in favor of that. Was that English? Oh,
So, yeah, so
Probably need
you're
to
making a
motion.
motion.
In support of this.
I'm in support of this recommendation and I make a motion to vote in support of this recommendation.
So then we would need a second.
Brittany second the motion.
Okay, so we've got a motion, we have a second, and take conversation. Okay, so now we'll put it to a vote. So all in favor of the recommendation, the motion with the recommendation in front of us. Let's see a show of hands for that. Make sure we've got it. If you're in favor of that, raise your hand. Okay. Wait, 4, okay. Yeah. If you're not in favor of that motion, raise your hand.
I'm abstaining. I feel like there's too many questions for me, so I'm abstaining on this.
Okay, good. 2, yeah, 1, oh wait, 1, 2, raise, if you're not in favor.
If you're not in favor.
To be clear, raising it means that we are reducing fees for certain parents.
So I thought you already did the favor and not in favor. I thought you were in.
Yeah, now I think you
There's-
did
But
not.
not, I understood that. Yeah, so you already,
Okay,
So
okay.
if
So
you're
you're
not in
favor.
favor of this motion that's on front of us, raise your hand. 2, Brittany's. Yeah. Okay, so 3, and then if you're abstaining, do we need to know who's abstaining? Okay, raise a hand if you're abstaining. Okay, we have 2, 3, we have 3 who are abstaining. Okay.
Okay, so we presently have 6 in favor of increasing the threshold to 450%. We have 2 not in favor of increasing the threshold, and we have 3 who abstain because they're uncomfortable with this.
So that means the motion.
That means
has
it passes.
Well, I would be curious on the bylaws, what is it, you know, half plus 1, or what's the rules for the motion that didn't reach what we needed?
Right, so
Because you can have a larger number, it doesn't mean it passed.
right, in our bylaws, it is just a majority vote.
Okay.
All right, so the motion has passed. We're going to continue these conversations for sure. As you can already anticipate, our March meeting is going to have a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions about money. This is a conversation we can continue to visit. It is really important that this decision was made today and so that when the applications go out to families, that information is available to them. And I wouldn't.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to remind this group of, Durham PreK is not a separate nonprofit, and so this is not a board of directors, this is a guidance governance committee. And the county of Durham has the final say-so on anything you vote on. To this date, the county has never overridden a decision made by government. But obviously, when it's a resource issue, they will look at it very closely, and we will stay in communication with you about what the end result is, about whether this vote stands.
I just wanna say, I was very torn, but in the end I voted for, because we have empty slots. And to the degree that we help these families on the margin get in, go into the pre-K, maybe we're gonna fill ours. I find it a shame. Funded slots.
I mean, I think the larger question on it is that I think we have to understand why those slots, the certain slots are open specific and have stayed open. So I feel like I think that's a really good point. I was worried about Whitted in particular has not actually been oversubscribed. And so for me, it's more of I always question how much do we understand why that is the case, but Whitted specific, not for the other ones. That to me is so we can have slots, but they're like, we don't want this one.
Could we make sure at the March agenda that
Yeah, we already have been in communication with the public school system, and they'll be, talking about strategies around with it. And, we've already talked about that being on March.
Just as a additional comment, with the survey, weirdly enough, oftentimes people you need to hear from don't respond. That's what gave me reservation. Because when you look at the people who do respond, what is their situation? Just a little, survey.
Well, right, when we surveyed parents who are paying a fee, and paid a fee last school year, 38% response rate is great, but that's still a significant number of people we didn't. And that's something we always definitely. No, I know we need to close up soon, with this part, but.
I guess one, I wanted to confirm what the March date is, but city and county, don't those usually start budget processes like start in March, May? I guess I'm just concerned about us getting behind the ball on how do we figure out how to close the, like, if, I just worry that March is too late for a conversation about how we close the budget shortfall that big.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, and I know that, one of the things that we are going to suggest that we talked about would be whether we want to have the March meeting to something. So, or, so that's something. Let's, if we can talk about enrollment real quick, we'll move to the next slide. And then when we're done with this part, we're gonna transition to our facilitated meeting, where you will have a chance to take a deep dive into data and other activities, which will inform decision. But before we close out this, if we are gonna change. So, real quickly, Joy, if you wanna talk about enrollment.
Yes, so when we met in November, I mentioned that how, enrollment's a very dynamic process, especially at that time of the year, and that new enrollments were in process but not able to be included in that month. You can see the impact of those enrollments here. You can see across each type of site, and then overall, we have seen an increase in enrollment. The NC pre-K data is from the end of November. The rest of the data is from mid-December. So this was the most recent data that we had available. So in October, we had 83%, and we're now at 87% for all seats. And you can see improvement across all seat types. If you go to the next slide, it's just a different way of breaking it down. This is by seat type instead of by site. And again, you can see a lot of improvements across the board, including at Whitted, which I know has been brought up. And I will say, again, this was from mid-December, even with updates we've gotten so far in January, which we were not able to include, there is still improvement at Whitted and some slight improvements in others as well. So we are entering the time of year after the holidays when we do typically tend to see more exits than enrollments. If a family moves, it's much less likely that a child is going to start so late in the school year. But in March, we'll be reporting on data from January and February, and we'll see where we are at that.
Sorry, you may have said this and I was lost in my head, but any insight into why the Head Start seats are not filled?
We can ask Head Start to also address that. We know that I don't want to put on the spot here today, but we can ask for. We planned a deeper dive in March.
And I do want to add that is NC pre-K seats at Head Start. not Head Start as a whole. And
Okay.
so it's a subset of Head Start seats that's represented there.
Got it.
But we also know Head Start has had, like, just because of the way some of the federal policies have come down, have had some, they just had a challenge
They're
with
having a
large. Just to give them a grace.
Okay, so we will definitely spend a lot more time at our next meeting looking at it. If you could go to the next slide, just as a quick reminder of all of our Durham PreK partners with the locally funded seats and how it would span out across.
For those of you who are newer, just to remind you that this does not reflect the full preschool picture in Durham, because there are seats that don't receive level. This is those seats that do receive.
Okay, so now we are at the end of this portion of our meeting, but before we conclude, there's been conversation about the importance of meeting for our March meeting. So what would you all like to do? Would you like to have a specially called February meeting? Would you like to meet in February in lieu of March? How is the group feel? And we would do a virtual, whatever we do in February would be virtual.
Typically, our meetings are the third Thursday of the month, and just be something to consider. But we don't have that. If we did have a February meeting and if we did want to align with your regular schedule, that would be February 19th for virtual.
I mean, I guess I made that recommendation, and I do think we need to move that to February. Also, though, I traveled for work that week, and so I could not be there on the 19th. That does not mean that you all shouldn't meet on the 19th, but I just worry that, like, depending on where in March it is, it's just pushing it too far down, like.
Beth, like, what do you think could be accomplished? I guess it was good, just, I mean, I know I can't make it, February's already full, to be honest, but like, what do you think, like, if we think about it now, like brass tacks, like, what do you think could be done to change what is gonna be done, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would also, like Commissioner Rakoff, talk about some of this, but I feel like if we're gonna launch a true budget advocacy campaign, at local government, then that time frame is short, right? And I think, like, we need to get ahead of, like, what are our needs? How tightly have we looked at what could be cut, what wouldn't be cut, what are the consequences if we don't give this money? Can we make our case?
Yeah.
Like, we have to be prepared to make our case, because there's gonna be so many other competing priorities in the local budgets right now, I would think, that, like, if we need to find $2 million, and a lot of that needs to come from local government, we have to make sure that we're ready to make that case and get ahead of it. In my perspective, maybe I'm wrong there.
I think March, it makes it still work.
You think that's still okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the administration starts working on the budget in the January, February range, but it's a process, and I think he'd still be all right.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then I'm good with that.
Well, right, and we could commit to, I mean, obviously, we've been doing a lot of work, budget planning. We could send you some, information to give you an opportunity to respond to, email. In advance of that, I mean, obviously, we've been working really hard trying to figure out where the opportunities are for cuts and where we have gaps. And we can certainly provide you with more detail.
And I also think, hey, I'm Maggie, I'm a facilitator for today here with Laura. But as we move into the facilitated meeting, you'll see that the questions that are being raised to you around that, I think this will be a great jumping off spot. So I'm so glad you're having this conversation now, because when you're thinking about looking at the data, thinking about opportunities, thinking about risks, thinking about areas to advocate, that this could be sort of your foundation for your next conversation.
So with that, let's make the transition. And to make the transition, we need to officially close our meeting. So we'll need a motion, a second, then we'll need to approve it. When that happens, the live streaming and the recording is. Okay, I will need a motion to end this portion, to end the business. Thank you. Second?
Happy to second.
We got 2 seconds. Okay, great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. That concludes our business meeting. I will now turn